survive and become stronger, so they had a chance to prepare and take revenge on this criminal next time. Einar stood up and said that she didn't understand anything when the young man talked a lot, but this time was different. She thanked him for his support and said she would endure the shame and desire to kill herself to become a glorious warrior like him. They had been up for 20 hours, and although the guy was mentally destroyed after today's events to the point where he couldn't even sleep, he still couldn't understand his battle but his feelings, though today he felt feelings similar to those when he was saved by that drowned knight's group. When the priestess had refused to heal him and the swordsman had tossed the potion vial as if it wasn't worth it, then he felt like a wounded dog that everyone wanted to kick. Though he was happy to be alive, it was a feeling he would never forget. From that moment on, Bjorn vowed not to let the situation happen again. But it happened the second he descended into the labyrinth. He evaluated situations, making the most appropriate choices, roughly speaking, focusing on the present. As soon as he opened his eyes, someone who was in a similar situation was immediately beheaded in front of him, so the decision was made to rely primarily on preserving his own life. However, as it turned out in practice, it was impossible to survive with such tactics. Therefore, it was necessary to change the plan. Bjorn woke up Einar and asked what if he showed her a way to become much stronger, but it would involve an insane risk to life. The partner agreed without too much thought, saying that they would already die if they couldn't get stronger. The guy realized that this world was filled with chaos, so they would go into the rift and destroy it. They made their way through the crowds of monsters. Einar was surprised that there were places with such a variety of species. However, Bjorn said that there was nothing surprising about it, it just wasn't popular because of the great difficulty and the constant need to light torches. Finally, they came across the goal of their raid, a memorial to the first man to find the labyrinth, the last sage, Deflon Grandel Gibrilius. In honor of the great fallen steps, the description is the same as in the game. Bjorn warned his friend that everything further must remain a secret. She was instantly sworn to warrior's honor, but asked what a rift was. A rift is a maze within a maze. In Dungeon and Stone it was called an instance dungeon. It is cleared by selected characters within a limited amount of time. It requires 4 crystals from monsters of various kinds to activate. Specifically, they now had crystals from a goblin, ghoul, razor-haired wolf and dwarf, and the magic stone of a monster of rank 8. In this case it was a death demon, allows you to open a rift for 5 people. The difficulty would depend on the number of participants. Finally, the passage opened and the 2 barbarians jumped in. A rift or instance dungeon is a passageway to another reality that appears randomly on each level. They have a recovery time on the first floor. It opens every 3 months according to city time. But just waiting is very inefficient, so there were those who found a way to open the rift forcibly. There are 4 rifts on the first level. The one where the 2 barbarians go, the whole sky is draped in red, as if the world is about to be destroyed, and clouds of ravens that fly over the heads of the adventurers on the way to the Dark Castle, the Blood Citadel. Bjorn knew where they would end up since he had used the Death Demon Crystal. Regardless of the difficulty, all the rifts of the first level are passable, so the main question is not about the monsters they will meet here, but about the squad members that will be chosen randomly. Suddenly, Einar drew her friend's attention to a portal that had opened, saying that someone was coming. The first member of the group was a dwarf, followed by a girl who came out, who, judging by her clothes, was a mage. Bjorn was glad this is a great combination, because mages are a very valuable resource for the city, so only the strongest can be in the labyrinth. In other words, she is a very strong mage, since she was here. The girl praised the barbarian for his ingenuity and introduced herself, calling herself a mage of the 6th rank, Allure Raven. She seemed a little arrogant to the guy, but considering that in the game all the characters of this class were crazy assholes, she was just cute. Alua then introduced the man beside her, informing him that he was Tarjin, the professional porter she had hired. With a smile on his face, the dwarf informed her that he was very pleased to meet her, and introduced himself, calling himself Hikuro Murad, an adventurer who had been exploring the labyrinth for 3 years now. Now Bjorn realized how he had gotten such quality equipment. Finally, he and Einar gave their names as well. The barbarian wondered why the new acquaintances were here, since they didn't look like they would be exploring the first level. But they wouldn't divulge details, saying only that they had heard the opening of the rift. Alua offered to divide the loot equally among all but Tarjin. The others agreed. Then the girl offered to follow her. The dwarf gladly agreed, declaring that following a mage in a labyrinth was a smart decision. Bjorn decided to follow his example. But for a different reason. It was the mages who convinced the ruling family to get rid of the evil spirits. However, Einar intervened, flatly refusing to obey the mage, promoting Bjorn's candidacy. She explained that he was the best warrior, different from other barbarians' wisdom, because he reads 6 hours a day. The young man tried to ask her to stop, but she wouldn't stop. The dwarf even laughed, envying Bjorn that he had a wife who respected him so much. Einar objected that she wasn't anyone's wife, but Alua interrupted the conflict, suggesting to end the pointless bickering and finally set off. But Hikuro objected that it be a good idea to know not only the names but also the skills of the companions first. However, the mage countered that it wasn't necessary, as there would be monsters of rank 7 and below in the citadel. Just her and the porter would suffice. She then added that she would take all of the keeper's loot, as she needed it for research, but what she heard made the dwarf even more angry. Such disputes in Dungeon and Stone happened often, and 100% of time the reason was the loot. Keeper's flowers. For mages it was an item for research, but for simple adventures it was just a lot of money. Alua then promised to give all the magic crystals she could find, but Hikuro again disagreed. Not expecting such pressure, the mage had to make concessions, promising to give some of the loot from the keeper, but the essence still had to go to her. Such an offer softened the dwarf's heart, and he agreed, offering to roll dice to see which of the two of them would get the rift stone. Upon hearing the word 2, Bjorn realized that he and Einar had been thrown out of the discussion altogether. The young man intervened, saying that he could not return empty-handed, so he was the one who needed the rift stone. Alua countered that they didn't need 2 barbarians on the team at all, and the dwarf confirmed, saying that it was too much for such a rift. Bjorn hadn't expected that, since they had seemed friendly when they met. Then he said that he would take 2 essences of ordinary monsters, which was the maximum he could bargain for. The companions liked the offer, and they were kind again, as if nothing had happened. Bjorn was once again convinced that he had to become stronger. He decided that he didn't care how many times those sick bastards threw the ladder down after him. He would still get to the top. The Blood Citadel is divided into 4 parts: the drawbridge at the entrance, the battle zone behind the outer walls, the underground prison behind the inner walls, and the demon worship area in the Lord's room. Gargoyles are rank 8 monsters that guard the entrance to the fortress. Most of the time they just sit still and look like statues, but as soon as they spot an enemy they immediately attack. The most obvious way to defeat them is to sacrifice one of your squad members to petrification. But things change with a mage. He can break the curse, and gargoyles without the petrification skill are an easy opponent. Suddenly Einar drew her friend's attention to a crystal rising up, but Alua explained that she used a spell to collect them and then they would separate. With a smile on his face, the dwarf thanked his companion for making the job easier. Breaking down the door and stepping inside, Hikuro said a light source was needed. The mage cast the spell again, raising a glowing ball of light upwards. The room was filled with dead people, monsters without rank. Killing them doesn't bring magic and their bodies don't disappear. There's only a chance of essence falling out. Alua said that spending mana on these creatures was useless. The dwarf and the barbarians confirmed that magic was better saved and decided to deal with the dead by hand. The fight was more like a beating, so after a few minutes all the monsters were on the ground, some even in pieces. From one of them came a huge horn. The dwarf asked how to use it, to which the barbarian said he would see for himself soon. The entrance to the first part was blocked by a steel door. Hikuro concluded that even his hammer wouldn't take one, so Alua stepped in. As expected, the bridge was up, so the mage asked Einar to blow the horn. The barbarian obeyed and soon the bridge was down. Suddenly, she noticed that the water began to rise as well. Red water, red sky. It seems this citadel is called Bloody for a reason. Suddenly, Einar noticed that there was something down below, but Alua told her not to worry, explaining that they were just regular dead people. Now the goal was to wait for the bridge to come down. Surviving an onslaught of hordes of dead is quite a challenge for normal groups, but not with a mage who has area attacks. The girl used a spell and everyone was illuminated by a bright green flash. Opening his eyes, Bjorn found all the monsters lying within a few meters of them. He of course realized that Alua was a strong mage, but he hadn't realized that there was such a gap between them. Finally, the bridge lowered and all 5 of them walked forward. The first part of the Bloody Citadel was passed with ridiculous ease. They passed the first part of the Blood Citadel with ease and headed towards the second part, the battle zone outside the outer walls. In a normal situation, they would have met a bunch of monsters on the way, but not with a mage who could destroy 90% of the opponents with a single blow. Only the death demon remained intact. Alua said that he had to be dealt with manually. It seemed that his regeneration speed was the problem. Remembering a proven tactic, the 2 barbarians grabbed the monster's legs and knocked it to the ground, followed by a kill. Seeing the second one, the girl realized what was wrong and cast a curse of worsening wounds on the monster. The main danger of the demon was in the speed of its healing. If you took away this skill, it would turn into a simple piece of meat. Now Einar